Welcome, everyone, to episode 61. This one's going to be a little different. We're a little tight for time this week, so I'm just taking some listener mail with these two gentlemen. So I got Chris and Bill here with me, as usual. What you been doing this last week, Bill?
Well, it's been a little slow on the game front, just partially because I have the in-laws visiting. I got my wife's parents and her sister are in town for my son's baptism tomorrow. So yeah, haven't really been doing too much on the Xbox, but my father-in-law is a gamer, so I welcomed him to browse Xbox Game Pass. So while I'm at work or whatever, say, hey, anything that I have or anything you want to download. So he found this game on Game Pass where it's not Ice Road Truckers, but like you're basically like an Ice Road Trucker. And I'm like, so like what is this game like? So tell me about it. And he's like, oh, it's great because he's super into like realism and like he wants authenticity. So you have like not the cockpit view, but like the cabin view or like the inside the vehicle. And he's like, every truck has this little thing that you can you push or pull to turn on the engine or kill the engine. He's like, they all have that. You can look at the instruments and everything. I'm like, oh, it's great. It's like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, like you're just driving. Oh, it's cool. Like, is it for points or to get money or anything? He's nah, you're just driving. So
You
he's
gotta
happy.
get him to play that Penn and Teller or Sega CD.
It's funny you mentioned
Desert
that
Bus.
because the next words out of my mouth were, hey, have you ever heard of Desert Bus? And then that got us on this whole tangent of like, oh, it does this and this, and then he started because he's a retired engineer, but he has a lot of ideas. So as we started talking about that, and I told him about Desert Bus, and then he said, what they're missing in the game industry is something where you can just drive around and it's like accurate. And I was like, well, you do have Forza where the interiors of cars are accurate, and he's I'm talking about being able to like drive down your street and like pull into a driveway. And I'm like, well, Microsoft Flight Simulator has that because they use mapping and like you can take off from your local airport
say,
and fly over your house.
Do you
and
mean
stuff.
Google Maps?
Yeah, and he's into the VR scene too. So I was like, well, of course you have Google Earth. So then you have that, and you could do it in VR where you can do street view. So if you want to like just be in Venice and just kind of walk down the street. So I was like, yeah, there is, it's niche, but there is that market. And he was like, no, it's got to be driving. you got to be able to drive. And I was like, yeah, but then you run into the privacy issue of should you be able to drive into anyone's driveway in the world and look in their front window?
And then the
like,
hillbilly comes out with the shotgun. What you doing here, boy?
And it's what is his name? Randy Pitchford from Crazy Earl from Borderlands. What you want? So yeah, it's that's been a little bit of the gaming over here, and of course, my kids when they are good during the week and they get all the schoolwork done, we play games on the weekends. I may or may not have mentioned that my boys have misplaced our copy of Super Mario Odyssey, so they've started looking at other games in our little Switch library. So Breath of the Wild is something I've played, and they've recently now said, okay, like let's give Zelda a try. They're both really into it. They're teaching my father-in-law how to play. They're getting all they want to do is find shrines and get spirit orbs. And Cameron's like, I'm gonna get stamina, and Callahan's like, no, you gotta get strength. So or life rather. So yeah, they're really digging that. And yeah, I'm just kind of the same place I've been for a little while. Not really playing a ton of Destiny. Looking forward to the expansion that's a little under a month away. And kind of continuing on with my little Lego journey that I've been on, but we don't have to get into too much detail about that because it's kind of off topic. But definitely enjoying myself with the world of Lego as well.
How about you, Chris? What you been up to?
Boy. I wouldn't say anything too terribly exciting because, it's still coronavirus land. But I jumped into the Raspberry Pi hole thing, so I've been figuring out how to set up Pi-hole in my house. And so if anybody has secret tips for making my Pi-hole installation better, and I'm just going to keep saying Pi-hole because it sounds ridiculously stupid. I don't know who came up with that name, but it works. So Pi-hole. Anyway,
tweet all your pie hole pics to Chris.
So when you say fell into the the pie hole, what is your ultimate goal? with the Pi project?
The Pi project with Pi hole, because I have to say Pi hole.
Yeah.
It's in the contract when you sign the terms of agreement. It says you have to say it all
Right.
the time. Is I just, ads like, for me, I'm smart. I don't mean this in the wrong way, but I'm smart enough to learn how to use browser
Humble
extensions
too.
and things
So
to
humble.
block ads. Maybe the rest of my family, not as much. And so I'm trying to do this as a service for them, right? So they can
Gotcha.
enjoy using their devices without being overly bombarded with advertisements. And yeah. So, setting up Pi hole. Other than that, I stepped back into Demon Souls a little bit. Thought, I'll warm back up because PlayStation 5 is, less than a month away now. So thought I would knock the rust off. I want to kind of be pretty fresh with the idea. So when I see it, I can be like, oh, okay, I want to compare and contrast and do all that fun stuff. And it's fun to play anyway. And I still find myself pretty good at it. So,
Cool.
having fun killing some demons. Other than that, kids.
Smart and good at Souls games. Most humble of us all.
If only I could pull off the trifecta of good looking, but not all of us can be crabby.
There's no video this week, so you can be however you want to be.
The kids, boy, kind of like Bill said, they've not the Breath of the Wild thing, but they've been playing some other games. So we picked up 3D All Stars a while back. They've been exploring Galaxy and Super Mario 64 and not Sunshine so much. So my kids are smart, as you can tell.
Smart kids,
They're
they
pretty
took after their
intelligent.
daddy.
The Galaxy is the best, and then 64 is still pretty good, and then the other game is also on the card. So there you go.
That is an accurate assessment of that collection.
Yeah, and then
Did you say inaccurate? Yeah, it
I said
sounded like
accurate.
You said inaccurate.
Absolutely accurate.
And then Eden is still like, she will not stop playing Super Mario 3D World. Like, she's totally completed the game like almost 3 times now, and just keeps going back and playing it. So,
That's awesome.
I'm going to go through here and I'm going to do all the stuff to unlock Rosalina again, and then I'm going to do all of this. And I'm like, that is so many levels in that game. So.
Yeah.
She gets frustrated sometimes, and she's not afraid to yell out a little bit. Nothing bad, but she gets angry and she shares her frustration.
She screams "pie hole" out.
Pie hole, pie hole, pie hole. That's the new safe word from now on. So, anyway, so yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's going on in my house. Demon's Souls still feels really good. So I'm curious to see what comes out with the PlayStation 5.
I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts, because I know how familiar you are with the old one, especially if you're brushing up on it, to hear how they do with the remake.
I'm going to be really curious. There's a lot of obtuse stuff in Demon's Souls, like a lot of weird systems and things that do not make much sense to most people unless you really dig in. So I'm going to be curious if they try to lighten that up or if they're just like, nah, screw it, which is going to be just as crazy obtuse.
Would you be upset if they played around with it too much, or would you be okay if they experimented a bit with some of it?
I think I'd be okay because some of the systems are so kind of out there that I just don't think they're really terribly practical. They're kind of neat if you understand them, and they were very experimental and innovative at the time. But some of the conditions for some of the things are so weird. I mean, like, a lot of things were based on things that were happening server-wide. So, like, world states and things were all about how the collection of players were doing in the individual levels, more winning or dying, and
weird.
Yeah, there's like, it's really strange. So I'll be curious to see if they try to stick with any of that, or they just kind of like, maybe not. So we'll find out. Yeah, really weird stuff. If you're bored, look up world tendencies and like character tendencies in Demon Souls and try to figure it out.
I have had a very busy work week. We started doing some respite care recently and picked up a whole bunch of extra shifts this week, so I haven't had a whole lot of game time either. I snuck in just enough to finish off Dragon Warrior 4 since we last recorded. So that was my 606th NES game I've beaten now.
I saw the YouTube upload, so what did you think? Now that you're done with the Dragon Warrior series, what's your overall thoughts?
Forever.
And why is Dragon Quest III still the best one?
I'd say 4 is my favorite of them. I'd say 4, 3, 2, 1. I just do them backwards. I think they got a little bit better each time.
Okay.
I liked the chapters that 4 started with. I thought especially Alina and Talon's chapters were really interesting. Talon just like having a JRPG where your goal is to like be this like awesome merchant rather than like go kill a great evil. It was really cool change up. Like you're just trying to go get rich, like buy and sell items. You're trying to equip a kingdom. You're trying to build your own shop. It was just a neat change of pace. The grind was a lot more manageable in 4. There wasn't a moment where you just like hit a wall and had to grind it out. Like I felt like I was overpowered going into the last boss, which I've never felt in a Dragon Warrior game. I beat him first try very, very easily. It was not even a contest at all. I did grind a bit going into it because I was expecting it to be a lot harder, and I was surprised that it was a little more on the team side. And the last dungeon wasn't a brutal, disgusting mess like in Dragon Warrior 2, where it's like dropping you in pits and like it was a huge maze and just a nightmare. It was very straightforward final dungeon. I never felt lost in the game either, where in 2 and 3 I remember there being points where it's just like I don't know where to go or what I'm supposed to be doing at this moment. I never had that with 4. I always felt like I knew what part of the map I had to go to, what city I had to find, what dungeon I was after, that kind of stuff. So even though it was long, I think it was probably I spent more time on 4 than I did any of the other ones. I never felt bored with it. I just felt like it had a good pace and things were always fun. And having the chapters like broken up at the start, it felt like little mini games before you start the main game kind of thing, which got me comfortable with it. I didn't like how in the first 4 chapters you have total control of your team, and then in the final chapter you only control the hero and everyone else is set up in like an AI. That was very baffling to me, how they could go backwards for the last half of the game for the controls and combat.
Yeah.
But because it wasn't as excruciatingly hard as the other ones, it didn't end up being that big of an issue. They never used the spells I would have used ever, but we still won all our battles, so it was fine.
So will you continue on, you think, after you're done with the NES stuff? Will you go on to...
Yeah.
Like 5 is known to be like one of the best.
At the very, very least, 5, 8, and 11 are very high on my radar. Those ones have always been talked about very highly, so I feel like I need to give them a shot now that I have a good, firm foundation for Dragon Warrior.
So
I
you
definitely want to keep going.
So would you go back and do originals, or do you think you would do like DS, 3DS?
I have both versions. Like I have all the DS remakes and I have the originals. I probably go to the originals.
Okay.
I just like to see how they were when they first came out, kind of thing.
Now you know
I really like them.
You'd have to import the Dragon Quest V all the way from Japan, which is very difficult to do. I hope you can.
I'm confusing them then. So maybe 5 wasn't on my radar. Maybe it was just 8 and 11.
5 is supposed to be is usually regarded as
because 7 came out on the PlayStation then.
Yes,
is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah, that's the one I was mistaking for 5. So I do have the DS remake for that one, so I don't have to do any of that excruciating importing.
So where would you recommend, now that you've played the originals, where would you recommend someone coming into the franchise if they wanted to come in but not get, kind of frustrated with a very grindy or very difficult game?
I'd say one's still worth checking out. I wouldn't say you have to play it to completion. I'd say just get a feel for it and go as far as you like, and then jump to 4. That'd be my recommendation out of the NES ones. I'm from what I've heard, like for most people, just start at 11. That sounds like a really, really good entry point for a lot of people, though.
4's on DS and forward, so you could always, if you wanted to do a better version of 4.
Got rid of our...
True.
Yeah, we got no DSs. We switched to Switch, so that's the Nintendo platform we got.
You got rid of all the handhelds and everything, or
got nothing?
Wow.
Yeah. No, we gifted them out. I had the Majora's Mask 3DS XL for a while. Kind of holding on to that with a couple favorites that I really enjoyed, and just kind of ended up in a drawer for a few years. And we're like, I'll still play it eventually. There's still some cool games on it. and then just like so much time passed when we didn't play it, and if we are going to play something sitting in bed, it was the Switch, or so it's like, all right, well, maybe it's time to move on from these guys. So yeah, no more DSs in the house.
It's a shame.
Yeah, I think it's a platform that I don't want to let go of. It's a really great platform, and it irritates me that Nintendo didn't bother to put backwards compatibility in the Switch for that stuff.
That was like my parents when the Super Nintendo came out, and they left the camp. See ya, we're a Sega family now.
Yeah. You guys ready for some listener questions?
I love listener questions. This is, if we had more time, we would do these every episode, but obviously we don't have all the time in the world. But yeah, I love listener
if someone
questions.
else
This is great.
wanted to edit these shows, we could do it every time.
Oh,
yeah, we don't have any time.
All I can say is I feel you.
Yeah. So can we get some Sarah McLachlan playing in the background somewhere on the next edit?
Did you see the music I put in there last time? You requested Lamb of God. You did not get Lamb of God.
I did not get Lamb of God.
No.
That was a good move. That was a power move.
Yeah. All right. So our first question, we got 3 questions from at Bickman2K on Twitter.
Adam's awesome.
Yeah, he's got some serious ones and some fun ones. So he wants to know, they haven't been released yet, but with disc-free options being available from launch, does this essentially spell the end of the line for physical media, at least for Microsoft and Sony?
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about it? Do you think they're like really, really pushing harder than we thought they would this generation, or a little less?
I think for this gen we're probably fine, but PlayStation 6, Xbox version, Mega Zord, whatever they come up with, that's
it'll definitely still have an X in it to be as confusing as possible.
Did you
Series Q?
see?
It'll be series, but spelled like XERIEX, so it'll be like Series X.
Xbox Xerxes. That's gonna be the next one. There we go. Calling it.
Did you see the news headline that GameStop and Xbox partnered up a couple days ago? So they're taking a cut out of digital sales from Microsoft. So every time they sell Game Pass in store or digital items, GameStop does get a cut of that stuff. And so if they sell the Game Pass subscription, they also get a cut of DLC and in-game purchases that consumer makes in those games online.
I heard it was payable in pre-order codes.
Or Game Informer subscriptions. But yeah, I did see that headline, and at first I was a little bit surprised, because I was like, I don't know if not Microsoft, but say the console makers, I don't know if the console makers need the retailers, right? Like they can just sell their own things. Why would they do this? And I think it kind of, in my own head, it just kind of came down to, well, Microsoft is still trying to sell as much software as they can, and if they have another party that they have to give a little commission fee to get them selling more of their subscription-based services or their digital downloads, and they don't have to pay that, since they're not paying the cost of for the physical media, they're just paying a little bit of a commission. I guess it makes sense, but I guess what I really wonder is, does this put any pressure on Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo to do the same thing, so that GameStop has the same incentive to push those products as well? But just to answer Adam's question really quick, does this spell the end of physical media, at least for Microsoft and Sony camps? I don't know if this particular thing spells the end. I mean, I think physical media is going away, but I don't think the disc-free options at launch for these two consoles is the thing that means they're going away. I think it's inevitable at some point. This is just another thing in the long list of kind of indicators that it's going away eventually. And we've talked at length about, I'm okay with it, I'm not okay with it. I don't think anyone cares whether or not I'm okay with it. It's just everyone's going to be different on this. There are people that like physical and they order from limited run, and there are people who don't care and they get stuff on Steam sale. So the world's going that way, and I think like most people, I think that this is the last, if this isn't the last console generation, that has a physical, optical disc slot, then we can't be any more than one away after this. It depends on how long this generation lasts. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's more my thoughts. I think we'll sneak out one more at least one of them. Like even if Microsoft goes all digital next time around, I think Sony might still hang on to discs. But thankfully, we'll have Nintendo doing their own weird media for many years to come, I think.
Yeah, it'll be like Mass Effect, like that, like optical, like arm blade that you'll get your games on. You'll stick it into the, stick it in like a RoboCop, right? Just stick it in the wall, and like then your games load into your entertainment center.
I honestly start to wonder if there'll even be another Xbox after this point. I think they're going to get cloud gaming and Game Pass nailed down, and then they'll just have it. Yeah, it'll be an app for your TV, and you'll just stream it.
Yep, could be.
Sure. Yeah, they're definitely moving that way, especially if they got GameStop, like a big retailer, like pushing hard for them in that direction too. I could see that.
I do think as long as there's been like a recent enormous cloud gaming failure, there's going to be like resistance to go that way. Like when like before Stadia came out, I don't like there were I don't think there were thoughts that like, oh man, this is going to take over the world, but like it was very much uncertainty. Like, is this going to cut into our business? Is this going to be a thing? And Microsoft was doing a lot of talking about like, oh, like Project X Cloud and cloud, and we got this, and like it's coming. And then Stadia kind of happened, and it was like, okay, it doesn't have like any of the features that they talked about. We're adding those later, and then it was just kind of radio silence for months and months. And then Microsoft stopped really talking about Project X Cloud, and it was like, all right, we don't really have to do that.
Recently, that's picking up again. Do you think that's because the Luna is like looming now too?
I do. I do think that like once the conversation starts, one part of the industry, then it kind of spreads out to like the competitors or the other people in those spaces. But I do agree with Chris in that I do think that you are eventually. It's like. You don't go to the store and buy a Netflix machine, right? You just have the Netflix app available on everything. I do think that is eventually where it's going to get. Who knows how long it'll take? But selling boxes and making hardware is I think in the future it is going to be we're going to have farms that can render all these things, and we can deliver them to you, and then still allow you to do your input. But I do think that the market's always been kind of afraid of that. Even when the Xbox came out, I was like, oh, it has to be online all the time. It's like, oh, wait a minute, we don't like that. What if you're on a submarine? So I think there's always going to be resistance to it, but I think we're definitely going that direction.
I think the only reason that Stadia bombed as hard as it has is because they didn't have any software. And all the games they did have were old, and you probably played them somewhere else, and they were like full price. It just didn't make any financial sense.
Expected streaming to go was like a streaming service, not like a pay
Game
for
Pass
each thing.
Yes,
like the Game Pass.
Game Pass.
Exactly. Subscription service is what I meant to say. Yeah.
Right. So that's the single biggest reason is that there was no incentive because all this software could be played other places. Yes, you could buy like individual things, but you also did get like the deal was like, oh, well, if you're a pro member, then you get like free monthly games.
But they were all old things that people have already played.
Exactly. It was like and like nothing against
no exclusives.
Right. So like nothing against Bastion because it's an amazing game, but it's like Skyrim. It's on every single device that's ever been like had video games made available on it. So it's like, okay, your game of the month is Bastion. And it's like, all right, but we've played that 100 times, So and then it was because that first video where they kind of showed like this is all the things you can do, and like the streaming is just built right in, and you can invite someone into it and share a controller, like all these kind of cool things that everybody was like, oh man, how are we going to compete with this? And then it came out and it was like, oh, like all that stuff is conceptual or coming later. It's like, oh, so like what is it right now? And it's like GeForce Go, or, like it's like every other cloud gaming service that has kind of popped up and then just fizzled out because people can play those games any number of ways without having to ensure that they have like a solid connection where they are right now. So, but yeah, I mean, and I've said it before, like I don't go into things like hoping a company's going to fail. I'd like to see like more people in more spaces do well, but like when you try to explain to a friend of yours that they have to subscribe to Stadia.
I think
there's no reason to tell them to.
I think Google's going to be okay.
Oh yeah, as a company. But doesn't it seem weird that like that's what they
They
came
don't
up with for
care.
an offering?
That's the thing I think with the Google, they're so big. They're like, well, let's try it and see what happens. Oh, failed, whatever. Like, oh, was that the thing we spent a couple $1 million on? Like, I found that money in the couch, right? They don't care.
Money wise, yeah, but reputation wise,
They don't
like
care.
that's embarrassing though.
No,
As a company,
to Google, yeah, they've started and killed so many projects. I mean,
and it's starting to add up to the point though that people are becoming aware. I think though.
it'll be really interesting to see what Amazon does with Luna. They're the only ones that probably has the pockets deep enough to do it, but I still don't even understand unless they commit hard. I don't see the draw right now. Unless they do a subscription, they've got to do a subscription.
Yeah, no, and Chris, you definitely could be right that they don't care about it, but like when you look at like some of the other levels of, if you want like that segment of your business to be good, you got to bring in good people, right? So how are you going to bring in good people in the game space if people in the game space have seen what you've done and it looks like you don't care, right? Like how are you going to get someone to come in and say, hey, come be a part of Stadia? And they're going to be like, no, like you guys don't care about it. It's bad.
5-year contract to double your current salary.
But look what Microsoft says. They say like, okay, we want Game Pass to be great. Okay, well, what do we do? Hey, go buy all these studios. Go buy Bethesda and ZeniMax. Or what does Google do? Oh, it's not doing so well? Whatever. I mean, have you seen a Stadia commercial since it launched? No.
So many when it was launching?
Yeah, and nothing. And so, yeah, they don't care. That's how I know they don't care, because they put like zero effort into it. It's like a really goofy experiment that somebody wanted to try, and it was somebody's kid, somewhere, an executive, and they're like, sure, Junior, here's $10 million. Go goof off with Stadia. Just shut up, and then that's it.
It just seems weird that they were able to get the people that they got to like be on this thing. It's like, oh, like, they've got like names, they got former, like Microsoft guys and this and that, and then it comes out and it's like, it's really, that's all it is. It's these like 10 games and like that's it.
But remember like seems... Oculus. Remember Oculus? Oh, Oculus. That's all you ever hear about. Oculus. And then Facebook bought them. Oh my God, what does this mean? Facebook has so much money. Oculus. Right. Whatever. I mean, do you hear anything about Oculus these days? I mean, every once in a while, it's like, they have a new device.
Things where you need to have a Facebook account to link your Oculus to it now, and everyone's like, this is stupid.
Right. Everybody's just like, whatever. When people talk about good VR these days, they seem to talk about like the Vive and stuff. I don't hear Oculus ever. So, just because somebody with deep pockets comes in, if they don't know the market, they still don't know the market, and they don't care because it's not their primary revenue. And that's why I kind of worry about Amazon. Amazon does it because they want to make Prime better, right? That's the idea, is that's their subscription they want to sell to you. And so they want something to plug into Twitch that they've bought. And just like how Google wanted Stadia to plug into YouTube. But again, it's not their primary market. And I don't know. It would have made more sense, honestly, to me, if Amazon would have came out with a box to compete with Sony and Sega. I'm sorry, Sega, Microsoft, because they sell physical products and ship things to houses, and that would make good sense. Oh, let's ship a bunch of discs to people or something, but I don't get it.
All right,
this is quite the pie hole we've fallen into.
Yeah, we've got one just for Bill. I don't think anyone else is qualified to answer this question. How many Legos would it take to make a PS5 Lego set similar to the recent NES Lego set?
Well, Adam.
First of all, how many pieces is that NES one? It's like 3,000 and something.
2,649.
2,600.
That's very accurate.
Well, they usually throw in an extra few pieces, so maybe it's 2,652. And it's not completely like 1-to-1. So it's like a little bit smaller than an actual NES. So, but yeah, I mean, that's my wife hadn't seen how big the PS5 was, and I'm sitting there at the dining room table having just a conversation with my father-in-law last night, and she walks in and we're just kind of chatting about stuff, and that was kind of what one of the subjects we were near, and I said to him, I was like, have you seen Oh, you know what it was? It was we were talking about the how to lay your PlayStation down.
Oh, yeah.
And then so she walks in and I was like, dude, have you seen the how to lay your PlayStation down? It's like, oh, wait a minute, have you just seen how big the PlayStation 5 is? And
Did you
then
watch
we
that
showed
video where they tore it apart and it's like the size of the guy's torso and his
I
head?
showed her the teardown video, and it was like, okay, like we're not being, like no stereotypes or anything, but that's either an enormous video game system or a very tiny man. So, but yeah, I mean if the Lego NES is 2,650 pieces, but remember that set includes that little like miniature TV with like the like the scrolling game that's on there. But I mean, if the Lego NES is 2,650, a Lego PS5 with all that curvature and you got to make all that internal structure, you're definitely using Technic pieces in there, right? With the pins to kind of get that going there. You're probably looking at like 3,700. So
70
10,
billion is what
yeah,
you're looking for.
at 10 cents a piece. Yeah, I mean, so that's what is that? That's like 4 pieces per flop. So you're looking at like $400. Yeah, you're probably looking at close to the retail price of a PlayStation 5 for the cost of the Lego set.
Yeah, you're probably right. But I would be surprised if it's more to build a Lego PS5 than buy a PS5.
Well, it's funny because the highest piece count set that Lego has right now currently is the Millennium Falcon, which is I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many pieces it is, but and it's $800. It's somewhere around 7,000 pieces, something like that. But anyway, it's the most expensive set they have at $800, and a new set is coming out next month. It's gonna overtake that piece count, but it's actually going to be less expensive because they don't need to pay Disney for the licensing. So like that's also what I wonder about the Lego NES. Like I wonder how much of a cut Nintendo gets on each one. Is it like 30, 40, $50? They probably make more on the Lego NES than they do on I mean, I know they make money on their systems, but the set that's taking over as the highest piece count is going to be they're doing a Roman Colosseum. Comes out next month. It's going to be like 9,000 pieces or something, probably like $600-700. So that'll be cool if you are really into Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott and have the counter space.
How sad, Bill, will it be when you are about to finish it and you have to replace that one missing piece with a blue one? Like...
I honestly, I was upset when I couldn't find that piece, and then 2 things happened. I was like, number one, I was like, this is a really common piece. I'll just like go find one. And then I went downstairs and all I had it in was blue. I stuck it on there and I'm like, you know what? Like, that's what Han Solo would do. Like he wouldn't like,
You're basically Han Solo.
Yeah. He wouldn't like. So, and for people who are wondering what's going on, as I'm building the Lego Millennium Falcon, I had my kids come in and help me. They kind of got bored and like walked away a handful of times, and they must have walked away with some of the pieces. Never found them. So like on the back of my Lego Millennium Falcon, there's like this like glaringly different blue like piece right on the tail. But I look at it, and I'm like, it gives mine personality. And if someone ever breaks in and steals it in a heist movie, like that'll be like the identifying mark. How like the cops will find it. Yeah. Caught him red-handed. But yeah, that's fun times in the Legoland.
Our next question might end up in the Lego realm again.
This next question is just for me, right?
It's for everybody.
Yeah, I mean you're probably the most knowledgeable. Wait, is there a Supermobile?
Superman doesn't need a mobile. He has his own fortress.
Is the best Batmobile? Chris, you go first on this one.
Batman '89 Batmobile is the best Batmobile. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's got a giant jet engine that he straddles basically, and it pops the tops off, and like Gatling guns come out. So yes, and it can like shoot its way through a iron door and like chop it off so it can drive underneath it, and the cockpit like pops up and back. Yeah, nope. Batman '89 Batmobile.
Drive up walls. Yeah, it's spoiler alert, that is also my personal favorite. I was talking a little bit with Kelsey about this before we were recording, just because we talk Batman every day. And the '89, like we talked about how this was kind of like when I kind of first became aware of Batman, like this movie was a big deal, and it was the first Batmobile that I remember seeing. I can't remember if I had seen the Adam West show like slightly before this movie or maybe just a little bit after. They were kind of around the same time for me. But yeah, that 89, which is an available Lego set. It's very, very, very cool. It's got that mobile cockpit. It's got that feature where the Gatling guns do like pop out of the top, which is great. There's this whole segment on the Lego Ultimate Collector sets that has like some of the history and some of like the concept art and like interviews with the designers and stuff that happened on the sets of the movies. And when you hear about all these things, like they wanted it to be like like you said, like a jet engine. They wanted it to be like like propelling, like, and on when they were on set like filming the movie, they couldn't get, it was like an engine that was supposed to like stay ignited and like be throwing fire out, and they couldn't get that like to stay lit in a safe way. So they ended up like just like pulling that crap out of it, and they just like put like wood in there and set it on fire and just drove it for a little bit, and then they like blew the fire out. I'm like, that's so cool. But yeah, the it's ridiculously long, like just front to back. It's like you could never like make these like crazy turns. It's like so stretched out.
At the I think I sent you guys a picture one time at the Indianapolis Children's Museum. Not this one, but they had the Val Kilmer Batmobile there. And yeah, when you actually see one of these things, it's so insanely long, and you're like, nobody could drive this thing. I mean, they're kind of crazy props.
Yeah. So he did ask Batmobile. So I was limiting my thoughts to just the ground vehicles, because I assume he would need to say Batwing if he was asking about the aerial vehicles. So I'll just leave it at the 1989 as my personal favorite, with an honorable mention for Batman the Animated Series.
That is my number one, is the animated series car. I really, really like that one. And it's heavily inspired by the 89 one.
Absolutely.
It's got that same look. It's got like the armored thing. It's got the big jet in the back, got the fins, really sleek looking.
Yeah. It's like,
I just want to give a few honorable mentions too. I really like the design of the one in the Batman and Robin movie, where it's just skinnier and like spinier, and it's got these like real wicked sharp looking fins on it.
Yeah, it's like
the 69
like a
or 66 movie. I really like that, the old 60s Batman Batmobile. And I mentioned to Bill, I recently read a book called Batman the Cult, and he's got a monster truck Batmobile in there with like a Gatling gun on top that shoots like rubber bullets to like incapacitate people. It's pretty freaking awesome too. Those are some of my favorite Batmobiles.
Nice. So yeah, what I was going to say, I don't want to interrupt you, but what I was going to say about the animated series one being inspired by the 89, it's almost like the 89, it's almost like they're the same, type of vehicle, like the same type of concept, but the 89 kind of took like a little bit of a Stingray approach with like those kind of like flowing, like wavy lines, and the animated series was just like that, you still have the curves on it, but just flat, angular, like straight back, and just like a little bit more tanky. But yeah, definitely like kind of cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. So thanks for those questions, Adam. We've got one from @StevenIder on Twitter. He wants to know how tempted any of us are to buy the mini Game Gears that just came out. Anybody getting in on those?
Steven, let me tell you something about age. And you get to an age where your eyes don't work as well as they used to. And I don't know if you've seen any pictures of the mini Game Gear, but like it'd be like trying to play half a postage stamp of a video game with like one finger.
All four of them, you get the magnifying glass that fits on them.
Oh, so it would be a full postage stamp size screen.
Which has the best name of a product. It's the Sega Big Window.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, Steven. There's no way. That's just not happening. No, not happening here.
So I will. I'll say again.
You getting all four of them? So you have the whole lineup?
I mean, if I got one, it would be the black, just because that's what that's what I had. And looking at the like the kind of that light blue, the yellow, and the red. I mean, the red's interesting because it kind of feels like Shinobi or like maybe Rangers red, for playing NHL on it. But I don't have a huge amount of nostalgia for the Game Gear. We had one. Had a couple games for it. Nothing crazy. So it really would be more of those things where like, you just have it, stick it on a shelf, grab it once in a while, like, oh, this is kind of cool. But
You put it on your keychain. You can play it anytime you want.
Exactly. I'm not really feeling it. So, I'm glad when like, goofy, weird stuff like this comes out because it gives the crazier portion of the collecting community some like zany, wacky thing to go for, and good for them if they like it. I have no problem, with other people liking it, but yeah, it's not on my radar for must-haves for the holiday season.
Yeah, this one's a little too novelty for me. If they did an actual like Game Gear, like they don't even have to mini it, just a Game Gear with like officially licensed, they put some cool games on it because there are some cool games coming out on these mini ones. It's like you said, it's too small, too weird. Like if they did a proper Game Gear re-release, like I'd be so into that, but this one's not. I'm gonna pass.
If it was like a 1-to-1 with like 20 or not even 15, 20 decent games on it, I'm in. Or if this was like a side feature of like a version 2 of the Genesis, where they're like, oh, now with a selection of Game Gear games or maybe some Master System built into that, I'm into it, even if it's just on a TV, not portable. But yeah, this kind of like super small type thing. Like I see it being like a thing you would hand a friend and they would laugh and be like, oh, cool. And then they put it down and that would be the end of
totally
it.
worth the $60 you spent for that moment.
Have to show it to 60 different friends. And then it costs $1 per reaction.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Steven. We've got a question from Get Off My Lawn 01. He's got kind of a double question here, some comic book questions. He wants to know if you have a favorite between Deadpool and Deathstroke. We got some Marvel versus DC stuff going on here.
I got to go Deadpool on this one. I mean, can you go the other way? I don't know.
I'm going the other way hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So earlier, and people who've listened to the show, they know that Krabby's the comic resident comic expert. I think he's got the correct opinion on the Batman Superman debate. He's got just like general just knowledge about
not an expert,
scene.
not an expert. Just enjoy.
He has a opinion on.
He has the definitive opinion, except when it comes to the DualShock 4 controller. But yeah, I'm more of I'm less of a comic guy. I'm more of like, I like Batman, and that's kind of like and I'm not even like as into Batman as Krabby is, but I just really enjoy Batman. I always like to find a good Batman story, and I branch out into comics a little bit beyond that. Like I love Saga, which is an Image comic that a friend of mine, Courtney, got for me for Christmas years ago, and I've bought every one of them since then. But a lot of what I know about the Marvel Universe, comes from the movies. I never read any Marvel comics, so I don't feel qualified to say my knowledge of Deadpool comes from the movies as well. So I think Deathstroke is a super cool character. Kelsey was nice enough to remind me of some of his appearances before the recording tonight, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember, this piece and this piece. But I think it's hard to overstate the revival of Deadpool. Like, could you imagine, like, this conversation, 10 years ago might be different, but man, I mean, Deadpool is a phenomenon.
Started coming back into the conscience about the same time, but Deadpool's definitely overshadowed Deathstroke for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So
I don't like swear words, so Deadpool gets like a whole bunch of minus points for me. Right. He's too gross. I don't like him. I've never, even as a kid, when I was like the target age and audience for Deadpool, hated him. Did not enjoy any comics he ever appeared in. There's some cool stories I've heard of after the fact that I want to check out that I think I might kind of enjoy. Like there's a Hulk story where basically most of the Marvel universe gets turned into Hulks, and there's a Hulk, what do you call him, a Hulk pool, I guess. It's like a Deadpool Hulk, who sounds really funny and interesting.
Hulk pool sounds like amazing.
Yeah. So I want to check that one out, but yeah, I'll go Deathstroke every time. I'm typically more of a DC guy when it comes to the comic side of things. He's just a cool assassin. He's like super serious, super deadly. And even in like the more comedic side, the Teen Titans Go movie, he's the main villain. and he's got some really funny moments in there that I like watching with my kids. So yeah, I definitely go with the Deathstroke on that one.
Yeah, I should have thought, like, so knowing what I know about you and not being into anything with the vulgarity or anything, that probably should have set off a little alarm there. Could you imagine if Deadpool was also a pirate?
I can very easily imagine that. And a cowboy pirate too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cowboy, vulgar cowboy, astronaut pirate, and then you said
don't bring astronauts in.
so you said there was another part of this question.
Yeah, he's also got the age-old. Who would you pick, Hawkeye or Green Arrow? Do you guys have a preference?
Are we just shouting it out, or you're going to call on us?
Bill,
Hawkeye.
calling on you. Yeah. What's your reasoning?
So again, I don't want anyone calling me out for, being a fake comic person. So I've not read comics. I've only seen movies. So my answer comes from.
There's no cool Green Arrow movies.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page on that. So I just wanted to make sure. So it's basically Jeremy Renner versus
the guy from the CW. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Exactly. Yeah. So and people have told me that there's some of the CW stuff, if you go in knowing what to expect and it's going to be, enjoy it for what it is type stuff. There's some goofy stories you can get into, but yeah. I've still not jumped into any of those.
With the Arrow stuff too, they kind of figured out what kind of show they should be like on the third season, I felt like, and I really enjoyed, like, from then on. The first two seasons were kind of a rough watch, but I felt like Arrow got interesting.
I've heard that from people that, and a lot of shows need to kind of find their stride, right? But I've heard that from more than a few people on that, and also Gotham, with it like figured out what kind of show it wanted to be, and then it was like, all right, here's what we are.
Okay, well, that show figured it out, and then it forgot what it was after a while too. That show is such a mess. Chris, Hawkeye or Green Arrow?
Gotta go with Green Arrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, when I was a kid, for a little while I was into some Green Lantern comics, and then also, tangentially, obviously, Green Arrow. He more would show up from time to time, but obviously he had his own comics. So yeah, I would have to go with Green Arrow. It was I really liked Green Lantern a lot more, but that whole idea of everything that goes along with the Lantern Corps and it's just cool. And I daggone it, they need to make a good Green Lantern movie. But anyway.
Really? Yeah. See, I mean, maybe it's just before my time, or I didn't get into the comics, but I couldn't tell you the first thing about the story of the Green Lantern or Green Arrow or any of that stuff. And I really feel like the revitalization of that T-shirt is just from The Big Bang Theory, with like the Ring Green Lantern shirt. Like, I feel like that's why I see it all over the place, is because of that show.
Yeah, and The Flash, I saw a lot more.
And The Flash, a lot. Yeah, that's true.
Well, there was the movie, and the movie is not as terrible as people make it out to be, but it's not great. It's not great.
So you're telling me, if I watched it, I would have a solid base knowledge of the lore?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
there's better ways to get
yeah, I'm telling you, it's an okay Green Lantern movie.
Right. So that's the thing, is you can tell people, hey, if you want to know if you want to get a good base of Spider-Man knowledge, watch this movie.
Sure. Or if you want the origin
there's
story
nothing you can point someone to.
No, not for Green Arrow or Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because they should both be in a Justice League movie, but they're not.
Mm.
Yeah. He deserves more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with Chris on this one and go into the Green Arrow camp again. Green Arrow is funny as heck. He's like he's my version of Deadpool, like, because he tells funny jokes and they're not quite as crude, even though sometimes they're sexual and stuff, but he words them in a way that they're not gross to me.
like Jim Gaffigan.
Sure, I don't know enough about him to answer that. But yeah, I like his humor. He's like you said, Green Lantern and him are a good pair. Black Canary and him are an amazing pair. He's got some really cool moments in, like, Dark Knight Returns. He's really cool in there. Injustice, he's got a really big part through there, which is awesome. I don't mind Hawkeye. I just watched a whole bunch of Marvel movies recently, and Age of Ultron, I know people usually think is like the worst Avengers movie, But Hawkeye's got some really cool moments in there. He's really shines in that movie a lot, I felt. And like Old Man Logan, he's got a cool story arc through that one. So I don't dislike Hawkeye, I just like Green Arrow better.
The most disappointing part of Infinity War was that Hawkeye did not die in that scene. Spoilers.
He would have just been lost if he died, because the bigger guys died, right? So
good, good.
He had cool moments again in Endgame because he didn't die, though. Because
did he really?
His family died, and he went really dark, and he got the cool haircut. And
did he though?
Samurais.
Yes, he did. Did he really though?
Well, are you doing a little bit of a Thor impression right there? If people could see your face.
That's right.
All right. Thanks for that question, Mike.
That was great.
We've got one from actually one of my old employees.
Oh, okay.
He shot a question. I don't know if you guys have seen his avatar before on our question page. But he was asking, it may have already been discussed at length, but what are your opinions on the state of remakes and remasters? Good, bad? Should more effort be put in by the devs? How you guys feeling about remakes and remasters these days? Because I think it has been like a couple of years since we really dug into this topic.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because I'm not, as obviously like life before kids, like you play a whole lot more games, you have a whole lot more free time, you're more like engaged in the in the day-to-day like gaming news. So I'm a little less into kind of the day-to-day stuff, so I might not see as many of the remasters that are out there, but I feel like for a while there were like a lot of remakes and remasters coming out, and maybe it's just not as much on my radar, but I feel like I haven't seen like a whole lot of this really pop up. Like on my personal radar, there's the Kingdom Hearts games, so you always have a new Kingdom Hearts remaster collection coming out every year or two. You have it being ported to a new system. The Xbox got 1 and 2. Prior to that, they just had 3. There's been the rumors have kind of ramped up a little bit again that a Mass Effect Legendary Edition trilogy has been rated, so it's likely coming out, which is awesome. It's been confirmed that the soundtrack is coming out on a 4 record vinyl set next month from Space Lab. So it's like all these kind of things are pointing to that's going to be a thing. So the question is opinion on the states of remakes, remasters, and then of course I can't forget Demon Souls is coming out. That's definitely a game that is being remade. So to me, I know a lot of people kind of have this very strong opinion on like, oh, there's too many sequels, there's too many remakes, there's too many this, like give me original stuff. And of course, he's right. This has been talked about, at length at many, many different places. But to me, it's always about like, if it's good, it doesn't bother me if something's a remake or a remaster. Like, is it good? Is it fun? Does it put the game into the hands of people who didn't have a chance to play it in a previous generation? All these types of things. And it's not like, this game coming out is taking away other games coming out that you can still play. Like you still can play that other stuff. So to me, as long as it's good, it doesn't bother me. Final Fantasy VII Remake was a bigger one that hit earlier in the year, and I feel like all over my social media feeds was just people like, this is great, this is awesome, I love it, give me more. And then some other people were like, this is weird, I'd rather just have an HD up-res of the exact thing that I had before, don't change it. So there's going to be different varying opinions on these things kind of as you go through the different types of gamers out there, but I'm all for it. I can't wait to play through the Mass Effect games again. I can't wait to play some of the things that I probably remember fondly, and now you're like, oh, that was like 15 years ago. Like, I wonder if they're gonna. It's like kind of what Chris said. Like, I wonder if they're gonna fix this because this was a system that was like weird back then. So the second part of his question: should more effort be put in by devs? I mean, more than nothing, yes. I don't agree with I
think he might be taking a shot at the Mario 3D All Stars.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah. So I'm always in the camp of like, don't just update the textures or like up the resolution and then push it back out. Like the one piece that comes to mind is the Shadow of the Colossus remaster for the first one for the PS3. It obviously has much higher resolution than the PS2, so it looked better. But when you play the game like side by side, on PS2, PS3, you had this weird, like the draw distance was the same in both games, even though the console is much more powerful. So you could have them side by side, and the PS3 version would still have like a mountain in the back, kind of like pop in, like when you got too close to it, just like the PS2 one was. So it really was like a kind of a cut and paste type deal, like from this platform to the other. Whenever you're going to put a product out, there needs to be more effort put into it to kind of bring it to the standards of that that people expect. And I think a good example of that, a recent example of that, I've heard nothing but good things about the Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remaster. You'd probably call that a remake because it's not just a remaster. That game was fully probably redone the way they redid that. So
did you see the promo they did for that, where they like physically in real life built the warehouse and had Tony Hawk come in and like real life skate it? That was so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy to see stuff in real life that's in a game, and like usually you only get to see that when the game is based on a real location, and then you go to that real location and you're like, oh, like I played this in the game. But when it's something that existed in a game and then they make that in real life, that's kind of a less common thing to see. But yeah, I know I'm going on, but like I don't have any particular issue with remakes, remasters. I really appreciate when the extra effort is put in, and the thing that I appreciate a lot that I don't feel like I see enough of is having a section, built right into the game where you can go in and watch some, developer interviews, commentary, special feature, like the kind of stuff you used to find on like DVDs. And like Blu-ray back when, the format was relatively new. They tried to give you as much special feature added content as they could. I'd like to see a little bit more of that stuff, but yeah, I have no issue with the current state of remakes.
Chris, how you feeling?
Good games are still good. I mean, obviously as somebody who's buying a PlayStation 5 just for a remake, or I guess a remaster, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I mean, kind of like what Bill said, if it gets the game out there and more people can play it, and maybe it looks a little prettier than it did last time. But like I said, good games are still good. Or like we were talking about earlier with the Dragon Quest games, that they re-released them on DS, and will they continue to re-release them? I guarantee it, right? There'll be another platform at some point. You're going to get those again. And why? Because they're good and people like them. And if you're a publisher, why shouldn't you give people what they want? And if they really love something like Mass Effect, I'm right with Bill. Like I've played the Mass Effect trilogy a lot. And would I go back and buy it and play it again? Yeah, no problem. So, I mean, yeah, I don't see a problem with it. If it's a bad take, maybe on occasion that happens, but most of the time it's either as good or better. I don't see a lot of bad versions of that. And, I can just think you're right. I mean, like, I think it's a good way to plug in the gaps sometimes, because like last generation, we saw a lot of them. Yeah. And I'm gonna warn you, you're going to see a lot of them again. Because they don't have time to develop new PlayStation 5 and Series X games. It takes years to do that. So what do you fill the holes with? Well, we can just take this old one and we can make it look a little prettier and sell it to you for $40 this time instead of $70.
From what I've read too, it's a good way to teach new people in the development side too. Like they get to work on these games and learn the skills that they can then take on to a new project after that, and they know how to deal with these new textures and new development cycles and stuff, and put out something unique after the fact, after they've learned the ropes on something a little safer.
And sometimes they really fill in some problems. Like, I mean, if you go back and play the original Dark Souls, everybody always complained that there was the swamp and it was terrible and the frame rate was hot garbage. And it was. I mean, it was like into the single digit frame rate. Blight Town was, it was, if you played that like on Xbox 360 or PS3, like it would just chug horribly. And the remastered version, it's like butter. Yeah. So why not? That's something that's really minor, but again, it was still a good game, and I have no problem with it. Cash in, sure, why not? I don't see a problem.
I was thinking that before, like that we haven't had a lot of remasters lately because there hasn't been like a brand new system like, that's been on the market. Like Switch kind of counts a little bit because it's relatively newer. But yeah, you saw a lot of things ported to it, and a lot of things, came to it, like you said, to fill in those development gaps. There's going to be a lot in the next year. And it's also depends on kind of how you define those things. So you have like, remakes slash remasters. So remake slash remaster, like, does that also include ports? Because you have like, for example, like Episode 1 Racer, that's like, okay, like now that's available on Switch. And we talked about this before, like, I love this game. I had it on 64. Then I bought it on Dreamcast, and it was available on PC. And like now it's available on Switch, and it's like, okay, am I going to be in a position where I'd like to play Episode 1 Racer on a plane, at some point in the future? Maybe. If this goes on sale, will I buy it? Yes. So it's one of those things like a good game's a good game's a good game, but I know what I'm getting going in. This is a port. This is a $10 thing that they just stuck on this system. I don't like the idea of someone putting a $60 price tag on something. Like for instance, Burnout Paradise. So Burnout Paradise has been out forever. It's one of my favorite games. Xbox 360, then PC, and it's moved on from there. So Burnout Paradise Remastered is available on the Nintendo Switch now for like full retail price, like $50-$60. There's nothing different about Burnout Paradise Remastered on the Switch compared to Burnout Paradise that was released 5-10 years ago, and it's like $6 on every other platform. You can get it for $5 on Steam. That's the piece that bugs me, and I'm not just talking about the Switch tax because the games that come out there are $50 plus dollars. It bugs me when a game that's been everywhere forever comes out on a system that's like, okay, it's $60. It's like, well, that's the piece that kind of bugs me a little bit, just value wise. But good games are still good, and I always like to see games come out, especially ones that I didn't have the chance to play previously.
And like 3D All Stars, like you're saying, maybe this is a dig at 3D All Stars. 3D All Stars is just like Bill was saying, it's a port. So you're getting 3 games for the price of 1, and they're all really good games. And they don't pretend, they don't say remastered.
2 of them are really good.
Okay, yes, I'll agree. One of them is, but
yeah,
but it doesn't. Nowhere on the package does it say remastered or remake.
Right.
It's literally just here's the old games. Yep. They're up-resed. Play them.
Right. It's similar to me like if you see like a red bar PlayStation label and it says, "Oh, PlayStation Classics." They're not telling you this is better. This is the same thing that it was before. We've lowered the price and we're selling more volume, right? So yeah, you're right about that. That it's not like it says, it's not like Metroid Prime Trilogy HD, like Super, something like that. It's Mario 3D All Stars. You know what you're getting.
Yeah, and kind of talking, about this generational switch. That's why I haven't been in any big hurry to play Ghost of Tsushima. I would like to play it at some point in time, but I'm kind of banking on the fact that it will probably have a Game of the Year PlayStation 5 version or something. It seems like a no-brainer, so I'll play it then.
Same boat as you, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat, but with different games. So yeah.
Bill's all in for PlayStation 5 Skyrim.
Yeah, right. Have you guys seen they're gonna add like 4 megs of RAM to the loading of the Markarth area?
You'll never believe how beautiful horse armor can look.
Yeah, you want to read these bitmap books for me for a little bit longer? But yeah, Skyrim's still awesome.
What about you, Kelsey? We've droned on.
I'm all in. I want every kind of game to be remade, re-released, ported, whatever you want to call them, in any fashion. Like Bill was saying, like something like Episode 1 Racer, love it. 3D All Stars, love it. Even though they're very bare bones and they're very much just the plain old game, that's it. But then things like Resident Evil 2 was one of my favorite games I played that year. It was phenomenal. And I still love the old one. Like, it's not like it made that game worse. It's just totally different take on it, and they're both really beautiful, really cool, do some interesting things. The Final Fantasy VII, I think, is the only one that's made me feel uncomfortable just with how they're releasing it. It looks really cool, and I'm sure I would like it once all the parts are out, but it's weird to like have just a portion of the game come out at full price. Like Bill was saying, the value behind it I don't see in that one, because I feel like I'm getting a third of the game, not the whole game.
Right.
That's going
I
to
don't
be weird.
even know when the other two are coming out.
Yeah.
They haven't even talked about release dates for the rest.
And they won't
yet.
even be on the same console generation.
Right.
Exactly.
The one, and I didn't mention that, but one thing I really don't like about the way they released that game is that there's no indication on the packaging when you buy it that it's not the whole thing. It doesn't say,
100%.
like part one, like part one, or like episode one or whatever. What do you call it on because you guys are saying part of three. I thought years ago when they first started talking about it, they were like, oh, it's going to be episodic, and we're shooting for like at least like 4 or 5. So I don't know if I've missed something, and they've cut that down to 3. That you guys are saying for the next 2.
I've heard 3,
Okay.
but they've given so little info. I don't know how reliable that is.
Yeah, and spoiler alert: if they only got as far as they got story wise in this one, like there's no way 2 more of this scope of game is gonna fill the Final Fantasy VII story arc.
Yeah.
So, but what it reminds me of is when Oddworld came out, the first one, Abe's Odyssey, and I remember getting really inspired by this little like writing that was on the inside of the CD insert. It was like, oh, like we have this plan, this long term, this is going to be a quintology, and we have I was like, oh, this is awesome. They have this plan for 5 games, and it's going to be great. And then a little time goes by, and then Abe's Exodus comes out, and then it's like some things change, and then Munch's Odyssey happens, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, but this isn't part of the original plan. This is like another thing. And then it's like Oddworld, like Stranger's Wrath, and you're like, what? Guys, what is happening? What happened to the original plan? So yeah, I do think it can kind of go off course a little bit. But it's funny that no one mentioned wanting these things to happen as collectors of physical things, because sometimes these are games that didn't get physical releases. So does it make you happy when something gets like a remake or remaster gets a physical release when it never had one before? Isn't that something to look forward to?
That's actually Anna Perina, the publisher. They put out this collection. I'm really trying to scrounge up $200 to buy it because it is 10 games that mostly have only been digital only until now, and they're putting out collector's versions of all of them in like one big awesome looking box set.
Yeah, Annapurna.
I really, really want to get it.
Annapurna is awesome. They are Outer Wilds, which
that's included in this set too.
Yep. Annapurna. That's how Annapurna got on my radar. Is I kept seeing that name as I would load up Outer Wilds, and I was like, if these guys saw how great Outer Wilds was, I need to know what else they know about, and they're awesome.
Yeah, the collection's got it's got 6 games in it that I have had on my radar. Like, I really want these if they come out physically, and there's 6 of them all at once, and then 4 other ones that I haven't heard of, but I'm like, I know the rest of these are things I want, so I'm sure there's going to be at least 1 or 2 more gems in those 4 other ones.
Yeah.
So I love that kind of remake too, when they just like slap something on a disc that's never been on a disc.
But something like
for that.
I mean, not exactly like that, but that's why when I threw that picture of the physical Final Fantasy IX for Switch in chat, I thought like, oh, this is totally Kelsey will get this. I mean, duh. And he's like, nah. And I'm like, wait, what? what? And then that's kind of like this whole conversation we're having, but it's like, nah.
Yep.
I'm super happy it exists. If it comes out in North America, I'll probably pick it up just conveniently at a store one day when I'm there. But if I keep dipping out of my region, there's no end to how many things I can buy. So I have to set a limit that keeps me reined in a little bit.
Yep. So just real quick, not just before we get off Annapurna, do you recognize the name from their film division or just the interactive software division?
Not film, no.
Yeah, because Annapurna is a division of the Annapurna Films, and your boy Brad Pitt, they were the production company for Killing Them Softly,
Nice.
among some other great movies. But yeah, Annapurna has just kind of got on my radar from Outer Wilds, and I started like looking into them a bit. And I'm like, this company has made or been involved with like a billion things that are awesome that I really like. So I try to go down those rabbit holes once I find those cool companies.
Yeah, they're a really, really cool publisher for sure. So more remakes, more remasters, please.
Yep, I'm good with it.
All kinds.
My kids were just playing, just last thing I'll mention, the Kingdom Hearts 1.5, which I mentioned before. They were playing Kingdom Hearts 3, and this was back when we just had 3 on the Xbox, and then they kept booting it up, and then my son one day said, is there Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2? I was like, yeah, there is a 1 and 2. I was like, but they're on PlayStation and we don't have it there. And then when they announced that the collections were coming out, I told them, I was like, oh, you get to play 1 and 2 now. And it kind of fell off the radar for a bit, but just tonight before bed, they started it. If I told you my kids like restarting games, they just like wiping the save file out and doing it again,
My son does the same
Yeah.
all the time.
They love it. So like the other night, they played through the tutorial, and it's like that little stained glass level where you're like walking up the stairs, you fight a boss, choose a weapon, keep going, and then so tonight he's playing it again, and I was like, oh, is this from the save point? And Callahan's like, no, he deleted it and started again. And I looked at him. I was like, why'd you do that? And he was like, I wanted to choose the sword this time and see if it changes. Because he chose like the wand last time. But yeah, they just started Kingdom Hearts 1. So it's like, I try to look at it from the point of view of the kids. Is like, they don't know anything about the business of games, or like that this is a remake, or that, they're supposed to be angry about it as good law-abiding gamers. It's just a game that they never got the chance to play that they get to play now. So I'd be curious on some of the opinions of some of the other folks out there to see if what they think about it.
So we got one final question. This one we pulled from Facebook from Thomas Blaine. He's saying, assuming you own your own properties, has anyone considered building an expansion to your house or do any construction within the house to accommodate a game room? So I think we're all homeowners here.
I've thought about, because that's the problem. I've got kids and I've got a house, and there's not really space for a game room. I think I've said that a bunch of times. So I just have to kind of put things in places and store things and get little things out here and there when I want to mess around with them. And I've thought about it, and I keep going back, but I'm like, would that make any sense? Or would it just be smarter just to get another house? I'm like, it would be such a night.
A game house instead of a game room?
No, but you know what I mean? The idea of heavy construction on your house is almost like, that would just be such a crazy mess. It would just probably be easier just to buy another house that was more to what you wanted and sell this one. That's my thoughts. Because I've thought about, maybe I would... Yeah, because this house, we own it free and clear. So
how long have you lived in that particular house?
I've lived in this house for almost 20 years.
No.
Yeah, so when you were buying it, were you specifically thinking about a game room at that time, or was that not even a...
You have to understand, when I bought this house, it was me...
Video games hadn't been invented yet.
Yes. Well, I just found Pong at the local Andy Capp's bar down the street. No, well, it was just me, and it was my now oldest daughter. Because I won't go into my whole big backstory, but I was a single dad. And so I had this huge house, a 4-bedroom house, 2 baths, me and my 2-year-old daughter. And I had games. I had a room. I had a room for working out. I had a room for games. I had all sorts of stuff. It was awesome. And then I
started collecting family members.
I got married, and
you were like Cyberpunk over there.
I had more kids.
Wake up, work out.
I mean, this house was gigantic when I first got it, and now it's not tiny or cramped, but I mean, there's no room for that. So would I like to have a place? I say it all the time. It's especially when I'm like, oh, I want to play this. Okay, I got to shuffle this console out, hook it up, shuffle the other stuff away back in a box, and then back and forth and back and forth. But I just go like, I don't know, man. Home construction, eesh. So I mean, but Kelsey, you have done work, right?
Yeah.
Nothing like major, like added an addition on or anything, but all the 3 houses that I've owned, 1 trailer and 2 houses that I've owned since being a homeowner, that's just been one of the features I wanted, like a space for that. So when we bought our trailer, which was our first home when we were expecting a child, it had an addition already on it. So that was just the game room was the part that was separate from the rest of the trailer. And then when we moved into our first house, we made sure it had a big finished basement with an extra bedroom. That just became the game room. So I put some paint in there and installed some shelving, nothing major. And now we're in our current house. there's this really weird room. I have no idea what it was supposed to be. It's just really long and windowless. And so I'm like, okay, this works perfect for what I want. And I had a friend come down. We built shelving, installed it in there. So it's got spots for all my consoles, TVs, speakers, that kind of stuff. And then he's much more proficient with electrical than I am, so he helped me. We had 4 open breakers on our breaker box, so we installed them all in the game room so that I don't ever blow a breaker no matter how much weird stuff I want to run at the same time. So we've like wired everything from the game room into the breaker box. So like my Wii has its own power source, my N64 has its own power source, my 360 has its own power source, so everything can be plugged in separate from each other. I don't have to overload any outlets at any time. Well, that's the most construction I've ever done for that kind of thing. I, like Chris said, I don't know if I would ever do that unless I wanted to like build like an arcade or something by my house, which I don't have the means to do. So I'd rather look for a feature in the house I'm buying that has space for that and just kind of slightly modify it. We're in a condo right now too, so we can't build an addition on like without strata approval, and that's very unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, you kind of got your basement, right?
I kind of have my basement, so yeah, that's a good way to put it. So we do have a finished basement. It's so like when you first get down there, it's like a little like room that's like enclosed off. That's like the furnace and the water softener, so that's not really usable. There's a little workroom where I kind of keep my tools, and like I have. There's really not a lot of room for that stuff, so basically all my like power tools need to be like mobile. So I have like a table saw that's like on a rolling kind of stand, so I can like roll it outside to use it. I have a miter saw on a rolling stand, roll it outside to use it. So when you were saying like can I like shuffle things around to use them, I can't just walk into my workshop and just start using tools. There needs to be like a whole like shuffle setup type deal. And the games are kind of the same way. So as you walk further in my finished basement, there's like a little desk area. Not desk, because it's just like something I threw together with like 2x4s and a piece of plywood. And it's kind of like a utility. It's got like my wife's sewing machine on it. I keep like a bunch of video game magazines on the shelves underneath. The Millennium Falcon's on it right now because it can't be on my dining room table because we have guests. Then there's like a little shipping room that's full of Legos, like floor to ceiling, but
wow.
not mine, like sealed boxes of stuff that I'm raffling off.
Wow.
And that's a whole other subject for another show. But and then you have like my actual area that's like kind of like the downstairs guest room / where my computer gaming office is / kind of kids play area, because it's got a couple of closets, it's got a couch, it's got a recliner, my computer desk and chair in there, and like just a whole bunch of just loose Legos that my kids have down there. They can come down and build whatever creations they want. And then there's a little piece of IKEA furniture, I don't remember what it's called, but it can either stand up vertically or lay on its side, and it's got like compartments with all different sizes. So the very bottom of it is got like laser discs and records and some bigger stuff like that, and then the middle and the top compartments have like like the, what do you call it, like the Power Max Panamax like power conditioner, and that's where all the power plugs in. So it's like the Switch, the NES Classic, the Super NES Classic, the my modded Xbox, the Wii is on there. And the Laserdisc player, and like all the newer consoles are upstairs. And then I have a closet that has like the Dreamcast and the N64 and the Nintendo and the Super, because they all can't be out and plugged in at the same time. So it's kind of the situation where it's like, I have the closet over there. If we really want to take the Nintendo out, take 5 minutes to kind of go in there, like shuffle it out, get the cables all connected a nice way, turn it on. Okay, now we can play. The problem is there's not really room to store hundreds of games down there. So we're lucky enough, my parents live just about 15-20 minutes from here, one town over, and they have a great big basement that all my like old shelves, I keep all the games over there. So we'll see them, pretty regularly, and if I just happen to be down there, I'll just go down and look at the collection, and I'll see something, and I'm like, oh, I haven't played, random, I haven't played Star Wars Masters of Terras Kasi in a couple of years. I know it's not, a fan favorite, but whatever. One of the first games I ever got, I want to play
remake.
it. Exactly, yeah. So I'll pull that off the shelf. It was one of the first 3 PlayStation games I owned when we got the PlayStation for Christmas, it was Masters of Terrascasi, NHL 98, and Final Fantasy 7. So like that's just like a
If I like looked through the PlayStation library and was like, I need to pick 3 games that describe Bill, might have been those 3.
Yep. So, but yeah, so like it's so the long way around the question is that's kind of like my current gaming setup, and then like the living room on our main level, that's where the big TV is, the smart TV with the Xbox and like the modern stuff on it. That's kind of like where the family like does most of its hanging out, and the kids are a lot of time on that TV. So we've always kind of been able to work around it. I do own 3 arcade machines. I own 4. 3 of them are like functional and operational, and the 4th one is like a project machine that needs some more work. But there's always been talk about if we did an addition or if we got a bigger place, like then you'd have because one of the big things that we don't have that we wish we had is a garage. And if we had the garage, not only would it be a place to keep the cars, but that would be where I'd put the arcade machines. So one of the things we talked about the last couple of years is we have the property to do it, to put the garage on. It's just the money and the financing and figuring out the timing. So we're getting closer. We've done the what do you call it, like the zoning, like the permits. We've done like all the research. So we're trying to get the ball rolling on adding the garage this spring. We just had the opportunity we had 2 enormous pine trees in the backyard that we've been meaning to take down. We already took down 4. We had 2 more that we've been meaning to take down. My neighbor just gets my attention the other day. He's like, "Oh, Bill, I got some guys taking some trees down tomorrow, just so you know what's going on if you see like, heavy machinery over here." I said, "Do you mind if I ask them if they can, do one of my, property if it doesn't, affect yours?" He, "Oh, yeah, go ahead." So we call them up and we're like, "Hey, what do you do for this tree?" And he gave us a price that was like half what we've gotten on other quotes because he's already there and set up. All it is just, turning the arm of the bucket truck, this way. So had the opportunity to take a tree down, so paid the money, took the tree down. So and that's one of the things that because the thing is, if we put the garage on the property, you wouldn't be able to like drive a big truck onto our backyard anymore. So one of the things we wanted to do is get those trees down before we did the garage. And so if the garage happens, the arcade machines go in it, and it would be a 2-level, and then the top of it would be kind of like laid out like an apartment, but just like used for storage for now, and then maybe eventually like have some additional space there. So we've always been able to work through getting our space in our current situation, and having my parents being so close. So I wouldn't call the garage specifically an addition for the game room, but it is definitely on my mind whenever I think about the garage. The arcade machines would be here. They would just be set up, hooked up. Also, like I mentioned all the tools before, there has to be the shuffle for me to be able to use them. I'd have enough space in the back of the garage where I could just walk in and start using tools. And that's one of the biggest roadblocks to me doing the arcade restoration stuff. You got to like set everything up and get a couple of sawhorses and get a piece of plywood on top, and then get the arcade machine, the piece of wood that you want to work on, and then get, your tool out here. And then so by the time you do all that stuff, you do step 1 out of the 17 steps you got to do. And it's like, okay, it's 6:45. I got to get back inside. We got to have dinner. Got to get the kids bathed. Got to get them to bed. So now you got to like take all that crap you did and put it away. And it's like you spent like an hour and 10 minutes doing one, thing. And it's like you could do that 17 times, 17 days in a row, but it's just so like, it's just so frustrating, like putting all that effort in and getting so little done. So love to get the garage done, have a space for the games, space for the tools, space for storage, be able to breathe a little bit. Chris, you said your space doesn't feel tiny. Like ours is starting to feel pretty cramped. Like every room pretty much, it's like, why is the stroller right there? Well, because it can't be in there anymore. Why is the baseball bag there? Why is the car seat there? It's like that's how it's starting to feel here. So definitely be able to breathe a bit more if we had that. But yeah, game storage, I know, is a challenge for you physical guys, especially.
Well, that's it for our questions. So I want to thank everybody for sending those in. Sorry, this episode's a little shorter than the typical one, but we'll be back to our regular 50 plus meg episode next week when we talk about Neo Geo games and hardware. So look forward to that. We should have that in about 2 weeks for you. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back shortly.